really. So, and then three moves with the skew, a planing move and making a V-cut and a rolling cut. And then at the end, I'd like to show you how I use the thing. I mean, I can talk about it, but if I don't show you how to use it, I can. But I've really enjoyed doing this, and you know, it's a little bit like fishing. Once you catch them, the fun is over. And so once you know, learning how to do this has just been a lot of fun for me. And I've used cedar to learn with, because it's very soft. You know, if you try to use something really hard right away, and you're not really familiar with the use of it, so I use cedar to do this. You could use, I guess you could use pine, but cedar doesn't have a lot of knots in it, and so it works pretty good. And I start out by putting a where did I put that? Over here. I just use a kind of a brad point drill bit, and then I drive it through what I'm going to use as my my handles and my roller, and then when you do it, you use it like that. Then you don't have to turn the roller and then try to go through it and make a nice hole right in the middle. So I start out with it like that, and then I use a driver, which isn't working on this one, like this, that I can just stick in here like that, and you know, and that'll hold it in place for me. And then that's how I get this thing prepared. Then I find the center, or I roll it with a gouge. I use a gouge with this. And then I find the center of my roller. And you don't have to make it curved. You can make it flat, you know. But I thought, well, you know, to follow the muscles along, it'd be nice to have it curved. So I did that, and that was kind of fun. I use a parting tool for that. I bring that down to 1.5 inches, and the diameter of this doesn't matter. Whatever you want to have the diameter, you can make it there. And then I use a gouge to give the profile. And now I use this big thing, and here's another experience I learned the hard way, but in order to buy one of these, it cost $160. $68 or something like that. And I thought, you know what? I can't get that past my banker. And so I thought, well, I'll see if I can buy some high-speed steel. And so I talked to different people, and one guy says, yeah, I know what. He says, 4140. So I bought some 4140, and he said, that's high-speed steel. And so this was fun making this, but it turns out it's not high-speed steel. So it works for cedar. Actually, it works for cedar, and it was fun making it. I enjoyed it. But 4140 is not the one that you want. And the reason for a large instrument like this is that when you get used to it, when you learn how to use it, there's a certain amount of thrust that you put into this thing, and with heft, you've got that thrust. And now this is a planing skill that I picked up from Darlow, and you can plane with a short end like this. It doesn't leave quite as nice a finish as if you plane in this area. Now, if you got a really long skew, you don't get that long tip involved in gouging your work area. And when you go across, take it very, very lightly. And that's one thing I picked up from Joe. Don't try to do it all at once. Now with the storyboard, the ideal for turning beads would be to make this 1 1/4 inches. But to make more beads, I made this 3/4 inches. And as a result of making it 3/4 inches, you don't get a nice round bead. You get more of an oblique type bead like that, and that's really what I want. I don't really want a round one, but I'd like to have kind of something like that to grab the muscles as you move it. Okay? You don't really want it nice and round. So I made mine 3/4 inches, and where I'm putting my mark on here is where I'm going to do my V-cuts. Now the V-cuts, you should take your skew and put it high on the work area and then move it down. And this is another thing that I've worked on, and I've worked hours on this, trying to control my skew with my left hand. You see, I'm a right-handed person, and it's like this. And Darlow says that you should use a firm grip like this. Now, I'm just saying this is what Darlow says, and I think that there's a lot of credibility to it. He says that you take your forefinger and put it under your tool rest like this, and control your skew with that forefinger. So you're moving like this, and your right hand isn't doing a lot. You're doing most of it with your left hand. And that's hard to do if you're right-handed and you've always worked, and you're 70 years old and you're always working with... So that's tough to do. So I just about handle this thing. He says to grab it like you would, you know, but I handle it. I hardly touch this, so I force myself to use my left hand. And that's not easy to do, all right? Now, the first cut that you do is your skew is perpendicular to your work. So your first cut goes through, and you bring it right about to the drive axis right there, okay? And okay, then I use 4 cuts. It depends on how deep you want to go with your V cut. Go off to I'm going to go to the right about 1 millimeter, and then angle your skew. You're still perpendicular, but angle your skew at about 11 degrees, because this right here is 24, and angle that. And again, you're trying to use your left hand. And if you've done it right, it should be, your angle should be about what your angle of your skew is if you've done that V right. Now, if you take this thing and you go at too much of an angle like this, let's say you start in on your, you'll notice that now, I don't know if you're seeing that, but now the angle of the V is much larger than the one that you really want. So you want to keep it perpendicular, and if you don't go far enough, let's say I do one here, and I start shallow. You notice I don't I go a little deeper, but if I go shallow, I don't make a nice V on both sides. So you want to try to learn and teach yourself to use the same motion, or try to teach your left hand to do that. And my left hand sometimes is a slow learner, and I do that. And I read someplace that one way to increase your brain work is to use your left hand when you eat. And I thought, yeah, it should apply to something like this. I'm kind of losing my brain cells anyway. So so that's the V cut. I'll do. Now to use do the curve, use a rolling cut. Again, you're going to grasp that thing as tight as you can. If you're going to roll to the right, you have to hold your skew at the angle, the diagonal that'll go in like this. And again, you're using your forefinger, you're perpendicular, and you want to move the skew vertically like this, but as you move it vertically like this, you want to push it in to the Now remember, you're trying to use the left hand. I'm trying to use the left hand. And make the rolling cut like that. So that's how I make the rolling cut to the right. Start out, you're not going to make the whole cut first time. You're going to make the rolling cut, maybe 3 of them. So you come like that. Now you want to make the rolling cut to the other way. Now you grasp the tool like this with your thumb in this fashion, right, hit like this, and now you're going to bring your wrist and move it around like that. And
why would you not change hands?
What?
Why would you not change hands?
Well,
I mean, is there a reason?
yeah, well, for a reason like that is you're not teaching your left hand something.
Okay.
All right? For me.
Okay.
It was just a matter of trying to teach my left hand to do something that my right hand wants to do. You see? But people do that, change hands. But for me, I was to try to teach the left hand how to do it. And actually, I was able to do that. My left hand, although it seems like an appendage all by itself, wants to do things by itself. It just, and so I take and you have to turn your wrist, and that's, when you first start out, that's hard to do. And Malcolm Gladwell, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he wrote the book Blank, and he wrote a book called Outliners, and he said that in order to really become proficient at anything, you have to do it 10,000 times. And that's a lot of times. Ralph has done it probably 20,000 times, so he's very proficient at doing stuff like this. But anyway, you take it and just turn your wrist like that, and it's not easy to do at first. And and you get a lot of, like when you're rolling something like this, and you get all the way to the end, and you got everything done, and all of a sudden, you started out too low, and it comes back and it gouges out like that. Oh, those kind of moments. Now, one of the things that I did for practice is I just got a piece of pine, and I put with my parting tool, I start here, and I just roll and roll and roll and roll and roll, and the other way, and roll and roll and roll and roll, just to try to, teach that hand how to do that. And it's actually been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. I've had fun doing it. What?
I'm left-handed. Do I have to use my right hand?
Well, if you want to improve your brain lot, yeah, you better do it and improve your brain lot. Now, that's basically what I've done, the enjoyment I've had with it, and I end up making these things. They aren't perfect, you can see that. But now the application of this is the next thing I'd like to tell you about. The method that I use with this on my legs, because I have cramps. I get cramps in my legs. I actually get cramps in my arms and stuff like that. Is that she would have you laying on the floor using this 3-foot by 6-inch foam, and I would get down there, and there was something I just didn't enjoy doing. The other things I enjoyed doing, I'd roll it up my back and arms and stuff like that. I enjoyed doing that part, But that I didn't. I just didn't do it. So I thought, well, I got this thing. I bet you I can duplicate that same action using a roller. And so what you do, and it's hard to see here, is the word glide. You notice the word glide in there, like a chair, the gliding chair. Well, what you do, I work with 4 sets of big muscles: the calf muscle, the glutes back here, the gluteus muscles, and there's littoral muscles in here, and the big quadriceps up here. What I do is I glide. I just roll this thing on that muscle, and I just roll it a couple inches like this 5 times. That's gliding back and forth. And then I take this thing and I shear it across, like we would we shear across with the skew. Well, you shear across that same area back and forth 5 times. And then I just go down the leg, another couple inches, glide, shear, and then I do the whole muscle down like that. But anyway, I thought that's what I would share with you. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you said that you roll on a foam roller?
Yeah.
What if you had a big wood roller like that?
Well, you could, you know what, I started out, I didn't want to pay $60, a little cheap. I didn't want to pay $60 for a foam roller, so I actually took some 2x4s and I rolled them in carpet, and I thought, gee, I can do it with that. But, that was a little hard on my body, hard on your back and stuff like that. What?
PVC tubing.
Yeah, right. So, but I broke down. I did buy that thing, and I'm glad I did, and it really is. It really does help.
How different is that than what you're doing with the roller?
Actually, the roller is doing the same thing. Okay. The same thing is that, but I, laying on the floor and was trying to cramp and get that through there, and I just didn't enjoy it. And this, I can just sit there, and a couple minutes. Any other questions?
How do you do that on your arm without having 3 hands?
On my arm. Well, that's a good question. Actually, I made some smaller ones, but one of the things that she does that I've learned is to use little, like these goofy balls like your kids used to play around with, and you just move those things in different ways and you roll them, And in this smaller one that I made, I kind of just push it all the way and roll it on. So.
How about tucking it back on the leg?
What? Pardon?
Tucking it back on the leg.
Yeah.
For the handles on the end.
Yeah.
How do you get those to where they don't go in farther once?
Oh, I epoxied them.
Oh, okay.
I use a rod like this, and I put that rod through there, and then I put epoxy here and epoxy here. And,
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Handles.
Yeah. So if you guys might not have any problems with it, but you might know somebody that does. The older you get, it seems though leg problems get prevalent with you. Yeah.
On the skew you made, the edge of it is sort of round. When you do that planing thing, can you use a skew with a straight edge, or does it have to be a round?
No. You can use a straight edge like that. And now, when Darlow says that this angle right here should be about 70 degrees, so that's what I made it, 70. And I've got it rounded, the tip rounded a little bit like that on this one. On the other one. It was I enjoyed this whole process, I haven't really caught the fish all the way, but I've got a lot more to play with, and but I have enjoyed it. I wish I could get some high-speed steel someplace.
Some A2 steel, a production supply.
A2 steel?
A2 production tool, yeah.
Okay.
You can harden it.
A2 steel.
It's air hardened.
A2 steel. At product, where is that? A,
Torch, I got it set on the torch.
A2 steel at where?
Production tool over on 44th Street by
Okay.